News that the US President Joe Biden has announced he will stand aside as the Democratic candidate in November's election.
Let's talk now to Michael Starr Hopkins. He's a political strategist who worked on Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton's presidential campaigns. Good morning to you. It's good to have you with us. Now, we've been looking at what's gone on all morning. What is your assessment right now of what happened yesterday to convince Joe Biden that he should stand down?
Well, Joe Biden saw that the path forward wasn't a path that would end in Democrats winning the election. And given everything that is at risk, a woman's right to body autonomy, our very democracy itself and access to the ballot, I think the president chose what I would call a brave approach and set his own personal gain aside for the country's best benefit.
There have been a lot of messages of support from those within the party and elsewhere about his contribution over the last 4 years. But it's fair to say in recent weeks the pressure has grown on him to stand down, and the pressure and those calls were growing louder. Is it fair to say that had he not gone, the Democrats would have been in a real problem facing this election?
Absolutely. Look, President Biden is a good man and was an even better president. But given some of his health issues, some of the frailties that all of America saw, he didn't have a path forward. And we all know that Donald Trump is an existential threat to our democracy. This is a man who attempted to overthrow the last election. And so the idea that Democrats would allow him to assume the presidency again is something that would destroy who we are as a country. So I think it was smart, and I think it was the patriotic thing for President Joe Biden to do to step aside. Like, imagine having that much power and being willing to step aside so that someone else, someone who could better defend the democracy, would do it.
The reason I ask about what happened yesterday, though, was we were told that up until Saturday night, he was keen to stay in this race. And there was something during the course of yesterday that made him change his mind. We know he is currently isolating in Delaware. He's got COVID. Do we have any suggestion about what it was that pushed him to make that decision yesterday?
Yeah, reports indicate that it was the president's polling data. The campaign had stopped at one point doing polling data for swing states. When new polling data came out, it became clear to the president and his team that there really was no path forward. So rather than risk bringing down the ticket and putting Donald Trump back in the White House, he did the patriotic thing and stepped aside.
OK, so let's talk about the ticket. Joe Biden throwing his support behind the candidacy of Kamala Harris. Fair to say she's relatively unknown internationally. Not a lot of people know what she stands for domestically. What would her presidency look like, do we think, at this stage?
So her presidency is going to be one that's based both in defending our economy, making sure that every American has access to living wages, affordable health care, really an economy that works for the middle class, not for the top 1%. She has a record. She was both the Attorney General of California, the 5th biggest economy in the world, as well as a U.S. Senator and Vice President. So she's got a strong record to run on. But this election is going to be about Donald Trump. This is going to be about his record and the action that he's taken. So as much as we're going to be talking about Kamala Harris and what a fantastic president she would be, much of the conversation is going to be focused on what a threat to democracy Donald Trump is. And we already know that because when he was president, we saw 1 million Americans die under his term, and we saw him attempt to literally overthrow our government.
It would be quite a moment if Kamala Harris is elected. She would be the first female African-American president. Is America ready to vote for a non-white female to run the biggest job in the world?
Absolutely. America is ready not just to turn the page on Donald Trump, but to continue to elect leaders that look like and reflect the diversity of this country. Barack Obama was the start of that, but he certainly wasn't the end of that. Having someone who is both Indian, East Asian, African American, this is the hodgepodge of America. It's the diversity that we reflect. And so once again, to have a president that reflects that diversity, that young charisma, that's something that I think America really needs right now.
You worked on Barack Obama's campaign, you worked on Hillary Clinton's campaign. If indeed the the nomination goes to Kamala Harris. What does she need to do? She's not got a lot of time to convince voters ahead of November's election, has she?
Yeah, there's not a lot of time, which is why it's so important that Democrats continue to coalesce around her and really unite the party. The focus for this campaign is going to be about the fact that Donald Trump wants to take away women's reproductive rights. He wants to ban contraception. He wants to ban IVF treatments. He wants to roll back the Civil Rights Act. Donald Trump believes that the 1950s were a better period for Americans, a period where there was segregation, a period where women didn't have rights. That's an easy record to run against, and you're going to see Democrats up and down the ticket, not just Kamala Harris, but all Democrats really run on her record and run against Donald Trump.
We will see how this plays out. It could be an interesting 24, 48 hours and certainly 4 months ahead of that election. But it's good to have you with us. Michael Starr Hopkins, thank you. Grateful for your time.
Take care.